Hi guys, today I'm really excited to be sharing details about this year's Women in Translation Readathon event. The book blogger Madel Radzinski was the one who had the original idea to dedicate the month of August to reading women in translation, and for the past 3 years, I think, some combination of Kendra, Matthew, and I have hosted an end of the month booktube readathon event to help spread the conversation. Obviously, we're coming at this from the perspective of native English speakers, and so when we say women in translation, we mean women who wrote books originally in languages other than English. But we welcome any of you with different native languages to fit this event to your parameters. And before I go any further, because of recent events and conversations, I just want to say explicitly that trans women are women and are fully a part of Women in Translation. Some basic details: the 2020 readathon will take place from midnight August 24th to midnight August 31st, so that's encompassing the full 24 hours of the 31st, based on whatever time zone you're in. Stick around to the end of the video for some new ways to participate in 2020, but of course, every year we come up with a few optional prompts that we leave intentionally pretty broad, partly to acknowledge that access to these types of books can be uneven, and also because it's just fun to have like a million choices for each category. We've gone for 3 prompts. Number 1 is to read a book published by an independent press. For those of you who are less familiar with the US publishing scene, it has what we call the Big 5 publishers, which are Penguin Random House, Hachette, Simon & Schuster, HarperCollins, and Macmillan. The majority of titles, especially those that get media attention, are published within these umbrella houses by their various imprints. So for example, Scribner is an imprint of Simon & Schuster, Knopf is an imprint of Knopf Doubleday, which is within Penguin Random House. It's all very biblical and can go on and on. The situation isn't exactly the same, publisher for publisher and imprint for imprint, in the UK, Canada, and Australia, but it's a similar setup. So essentially, any publisher that's not part of these corporate giants is independent. It feels like an especially good year to highlight those publishers that take chances on translated titles, particularly coming from authors who don't have huge international platforms yet. And so often it's the small independent publishers with the thinner profit margins who are making that effort. So we've included a list of indie publishers we'd recommend below. Some of them focus on translated lit exclusively, and others offer a mixture, but all of them are great resources for expanding your reading. And if you're planning to buy books, it would be fantastic to buy directly from these publishers or from your local bookstores, but I'll also leave a few more general non-Amazon purchasing options below. Prompt number 2 is to read a genre title. I can be guilty as a reader for sometimes equating translated lit with literary fiction, but clearly both words in that phrase narrow the true scope of the work coming from abroad, and the Nordic noir and crime boom has really emphasized this. So although we encourage you, as always, to expand your nonfiction translated reading as well, this year we're specifically challenging you to read a genre fiction title. So that can be science fiction or fantasy, romance, crime, thriller, so on. Finally, prompt number 3 is to read a book that was published in its original language pre-2000. It can be easier to focus on like the buzzy newer releases, and this is a way to explore beyond that. Also, if you start looking at the copyright pages of translated books, you'll find that often there's a significant gap between the original language publication and English language publication. For example, Last Witnesses by Svetlana Alexievich came out in Russian in 1985 and was only published in English last year. So the hope is that this prompt will lead to those kinds of interesting discoveries. We then have 3 bonus prompts. Each one of us chose a book that we're going to focus on during the readathon week itself, and that fits one of the main prompts. If any of these sound interesting to you, or you're looking for more specific recommendations to latch onto, feel free to read along and chat with us. I have a list here, it'll also be in the description box. Kendra chose Breasts and Eggs by Mieko Kawakami, translated from Japanese by David Boyd, and this fits prompt number 1 because it's published by Europa Editions. Matthew chose 7 Years of Darkness by Jeong You-Jeong, translated from Korean by Kim Chi-Yeong, which fits prompt number 2 because it's a thriller. And I'll be reading The Door by Magda Szabó, translated from Hungarian by Len Rix, and this was published in Hungarian in 1987, so it fits prompt number 3. Although this is a week-long readathon, we'll be spending the whole month of August highlighting women in translation on our channels and other platforms, including Twitter. where we'll be giving shout outs to booktubers who feature women in translation or have featured them in the past. If you fit this category, feel free to tag us and use the hashtags that we can find you. Or if you have a blog too, the three of us are not in that sphere at all. Lastly, and this is exciting for me, if you participate and want to try your hand at written reviews, you have two options for the first time this year. One is that if you read a newer release, so one that was published or reissued in English in 2019 or 2020, you can write a review on it for Open Letters, Review, the online literary journal where I'm an editor. 600 to 800 words is typically a good benchmark for this. My contact information is below, and you can send these reviews to me throughout August up to the deadline of Sunday, September 6th. I'll edit your piece and then we can run it on Open Letters. Option 2 comes from a partnership with the amazing Rachel from the blog Pace Amore Libri. If you read and would then like to recommend a pre-2019 Women in Translation title, or if you just want to write a shorter review, something that's not 600 to 800 words, Rachel has really kindly agreed to host a collective piece full of these recommendations. These would be short descriptions and thoughts, no more than 6 sentences per book, 2 books maximum per person. If interested, you can contact me. I'll reply with a template, and you can then send your contribution back to me by September 6th. We just wanted to create a way for people who don't necessarily have channels or blogs or other platforms like that to recommend the books that they discover during this month. Of course, people with platforms are also, we really would like you to contribute too. And the hope is that this will all just end up with a really varied list on Rachel's blog for people to explore, because it's great to have August as a time frame to focus on this, but ideally we'd carry through and find more books by women in translation to read all year long. Those are the essential business details for now. I'll have a TBR video coming soon. In the meantime, let me know if you plan to participate during the readathon week itself or maybe during the whole month of August. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you soon.